Okay, Karen, we are live on YouTube, so when you want to start at 1:30.
Thank you very much, Dan. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's Planning and Environmental Protection Committee. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this video via the Council's YouTube page. Due to the government guidance on social distancing, this meeting is being held remotely. A decision summary and minutes of the meeting will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on the Council's YouTube page. To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, I would ask all members of the committee to keep their video camera switched on for the duration of the meeting and keep their microphone muted except when I invite you to speak. Officers will join us to introduce their reports in the usual way. Any members wishing to ask questions or make a comment should indicate this by clicking the raised hand function in the participant screen. This is the blue hand. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, ask your question and then mute it again to allow officers to respond. As with all new arrangements, especially those involving new systems, there is always a risk that we may run into technical problems. We'll ask for your patience if we do. Should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed and the public broadcast will be paused. If it is not possible to address the fault, the meeting may have to be abandoned until such time as it can be reconvened. I will begin by doing a roll call of members of the committee, and if members please could confirm your names and attendance. Councillor Bond.
Yep, hello.
Councillor Brown.
Okay, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Casey.
I'm present.
Councillor Hiller.
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Councillor Hogg.
Present.
Councillor Hussain. Not yet, I see. Councillor Iqbal.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Jamil.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Rush.
Present.
And myself, Councillor Harper. We also have in attendance Sylvia Bland, the Development Manager for Planning, Stephen Turnbull, Planning Solicitor, Nick Greaves, the Highways Officer, and members of the Democratic Services team. Item 1 then is apologies for absence. Karen, please.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Jones. Councillor Jamil is in attendance as substitute. We've also had apologies from Councillor Warren.
Thank you, Karen. No others. No. Item 2 is declarations of interest. None are forthcoming. Item 3 then is declarations to make representation as a ward councillor. No, none of those. Item 4 then is the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of June 2020. We have been asked to approve these minutes held on the 30th of June 2020 as a correct record. If they are, could I have a proposer, please?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hiller. And a seconder, please.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Casey. Are we all agreed? Yep, no hands up, so we're all agreed. Thank you very much. We'll now move on. Item 5.1 is the planning application for 21 The Village, Orton Longville. And if I could please, I'll ask Sylvia Bland to introduce the item when you're ready.
Sorry, excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
We just need to make sure that the speakers are in attendance. Yes, they are in attendance.
Introduce the item. Okay,
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. This is an application relating to 21 The Village in Orton, and it's for a single detached dwelling with detached garage. The next slide will show the location of the application site. It's bounded by the red line, and you will see that it sits between number 21 and number 21A, The Village. Next slide, please. The very front part of the application site is located within the Orton Longville Conservation Area. Next slide. This photograph shows the area within the conservation area looking from the application site outwards. You can see the road, the village in the foreground, and the remainder of houses within the conservation area behind. Next slide. The existing site at the moment comprises of number 21 The Village, which is the dwelling shown on the right-hand side. It is accessed by its own private driveway running parallel to its boundary. To the bottom left-hand side of the site is 21A The Village, and that is accessed via its own driveway, which also is part of a shared drive leading onto the village, and that shared drive is shared with number 21. Next slide, please. The proposed site comprises the slide that we see in front of us, with the proposed new dwelling tucked in between number 21 and number 21A. It would be a detached house, and it would also have a detached garage that is located just in the front garden area. You can see that together with a turning head and the access to the site. The next slide just shows the access arrangements a little bit more clearly. So to the right-hand side in the pale blue is the access to number 21. The more aquamarine colour shows the access to the proposed new dwelling, and that's taken off the access that's shown in lilac, which is the shared access, and that leads on to the village. And then the area coloured in pink is the private drive leading to the existing neighbouring property at number 21A. So the area shown in aquamarine would be an access taken off a shared access, and it would lead directly to the new dwelling, and it would be separate from number 21, but it would have a part shared access with number 21A. Next slide. This is a photograph of the existing access arrangements. On the left-hand side, we can see the access to number 21. On the right-hand side, the shared access leading to 21A and also to the proposed new dwelling. And the red arrow shows the location of the proposed new house between 21 and 21A. And this view is taken looking from the conservation area towards the application site. The next slide shows a view of the access and the neighbouring property at 21A, with the application site just off to the left-hand side there. The next slide shows the application site. So it's a large substantial plot, it's predominantly level, it's enclosed by an existing hedge and fencing, and it has a belt of trees to the rear. Next slide. This shows a view standing at the back of the application site, looking towards the village with number 21 on the right-hand side and the existing access gates that lead into the application plot. Next slide. And this view is looking again within the application site, but looking left towards the neighbouring property at number 21A. And you'll see there it has a substantial hedge along the side of the property, which extends to the rear and also to the front of the property. Next slide. These elevations show what the proposed new house would look like. It would be 1.5 stories in height, The north proposed elevation is the front, with the front door and 2 dormer windows. The east proposed is the elevation facing towards the existing house at 21, the village, whereas the west proposed shows the elevation facing towards the neighbouring property at 21A. And then the south proposed is the rear elevation, which has large patio windows at ground floor, bedrooms at first floor, and 2 gable projections. Next slide. These are the floor plans of both the ground floor and the first floor. You can see that a 5-bedroomed house would be created. Next slide. These are quite helpful coloured 3D views of the property, showing the 2 slides towards the top show the front elevation, whereas the bottom right-hand slide shows the rear elevation. Next slide. The dwelling would have a detached garage with, as shown here in these elevations, it would be a double garage, and it would be located to the front of the property. Next slide. This is a photograph of the neighbouring property at number 21A, the village, and you can see that to its ground floor it has garage doors, it has a bedroom window to the first floor, and it has a hedge to the side. The occupiers of this property have objected to the application. Throughout the course of the history of the application, there are various objections and also comments made by consultees have been addressed, and the application has been amended a number of times. The only point of concern that remains for the occupiers of 21A is the impact of the view from their first floor bedroom window, which would look across obliquely towards the application site. But as was seen from the previous slides, the garage would be shown to the side, and it would be a single-storey garage. It would have a maximum ridge height of 4.3 metres, which corresponds to the sill level of the first floor window. So for that reason, we consider that the amendments that have been made have been sufficient to ensure there would no harm to the amenity of the adjoining property at number 21A. Through the course of the application, we've also sought clarification on various points that had been raised as part of an objection from the Council's Highway Department. These have now all been addressed, and the Highways Department have confirmed that they no longer object to the application. We had attached a condition number C13 to the proposed recommendation in your report, and I've now had confirmation that that condition is no longer necessary as a result of the low vehicle speeds within the surrounding area and the fact that this would be off a private drive. So that is the end of the presentation. Really, the remaining points to say are that we have considered the impact on the conservation area, on the design and character of the surrounding properties, on highways, neighbouring amenity, on trees and archaeology, as well as on contamination. And these issues have either been addressed within the application itself or would be controlled by way of a condition or a number of conditions. Would draw your attention to the information report. And you see there that there is a objection from the parish council, mainly based on highway issues, which, as I've explained, have been addressed to the satisfaction of the Highway Department. The applicant has also submitted a statement and asked for 2 conditions to be removed. Condition C8, or one part of condition C8 relating to boundary treatment. On reflection, we consider that that part of the condition does need to remain, that the details shown on the site layout plan are not sufficiently detailed enough with regard to the type of hedging, type of fencing and so on. So we consider that should be retained. However, condition C13, we are happy for that to be removed should members be minded to approve the condition, to approve the application. So that is all the late representations. The objectors to number 21A have submitted a further representation with regard to the siting of the proposed garage, which we have covered in the presentation and in the report itself. They've suggested a route for construction traffic, which would be along the access to the house in any case. Therefore, we don't consider that any further condition is required. And having considered the application in the round against planning policy, we recommend that it be approved.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Right, we have one person registered to speak. Please can I invite Richard Smith, the applicant, to address the committee. You will have 5 minutes in which to address the committee, and then afterwards we will take some questions. So when you're ready, Mr. Smith.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just before I start, for a bit of concurrency, can I just request a lady from planning checks the height that she stated of the garage? Yes, I think she stated it at 4.3, and I believe our latest drawing shows it at 4.5, but maybe she can clarify that whilst I conduct my presentation.
Yep, okay, you carry on then.
Okay, thank you very much. Our planning application was submitted on the 1st of April. It was initially for an L-shaped property. We modified and reduced the proposal 3 times in order to try and gain approval of the Conservation Officer. However, it appeared that he simply did not like the L-shaped design. In accordance with his direction, we submitted a complete redesign, which is the proposal we have before you today. All the council departments responded to the initial L-shaped proposal. However, not all have provided revised responses, taking into account the significant changes of our current proposal. The Conservation Officer now supports the revised proposal, likely because it is the design and layout that he stipulated. The case officer has visited the site and is content there are, as already mentioned, there are no highways related issues preventing approval of our current proposal. There has only been one objector to any of our proposals. This is Matrix Planning Limited on behalf of Ms. Sproul, who lives at number 21A, the village. Ms. Sproul was also the only objector to the outline planning that was approved by the council in 2017. Matrix have submitted 3 separate objections, although only one relates to the revised application you have in front of you today. Their latest submission objects to the location of the garage, suggesting it causes detrimental enclosure to the outlook from an upstairs dormer window. The ridge of this garage sits well below and oblique to the eye line of this window. The only reduction of view is that into a small part of our own garden. The Conservation Officer supports the location, design and orientation of the garage, as does the case officer, commenting that the first floor bedroom still retains both a generous outlook across its driveway, as well as being able to obtain natural light provisions. The case officer is not recommending any further changes to our proposal. We therefore request that the committee agree with the case officer and do not support this unfounded objection. In addition to the garage objection, Matrix Planners have also requested 2 conditions. The first relates to restricting our existing legal right of way at all times and for all purposes over the first part of the lane leading to 21A. Using the first part of this lane, as we do currently, will have no increased impact on the privacy of number 21A, as is being suggested by Matrix. Our new access lane will be constructed at a time that makes sense in the scheme of construction, also giving consideration to planting seasons. To create our new lane, several newly planted trees and numerous newly planted shrubs and hedging will have to be moved. These will eventually form part of the landscaping of the new property. The case officer has not supported this requested condition, and we request that the committee do not either. The second condition requested by Matrix relates to the removal of permitted development rights on the west elevation of our proposal. Any such future window would face onto the gable of number 21A, which has no windows on it, less a half-glazed pedestrian door, a garage door, sorry. Due to its proximity to the boundary, 21A does not have side access on its eastern gable or usable space to its east. As such, any additional window obtained through permitted development rights could not reasonably cause privacy loss as is being suggested. As no such restriction is in place for 21A, we request that no such restriction is placed upon us, and indeed the planning department aren't suggesting that this is included. The case officer has not requested this condition, and we request that the committee do not either. As you can see from the case officer report, the Conservation Department considers that our current proposal will preserve the character and appearance of Orton Longville Conservation Area. They have confirmed it is now in accordance with the Town and Country Planning Act, the Peterborough Local Plan and a National Planning Policy Framework. As such, the case officer has recommended approval of our final proposal, and we request that the committee supports his recommendation. We do, however, request that the committee considers 2 minor amendments to conditions C8 and C13, as already mentioned, and as follows. Condition C8 relates to the hard and soft landscaping. We request that the last item in the list of 3 is removed from reserved matters, namely the details of any boundary treatment. The drawing P101 revision E already provides this detail, and indeed the hedging and fencing is already in place. Condition C13 refers to a restriction in hedge height to 0.6 metres for the first 2.4 metres of the driveway. The lady just mentioned that this will be withdrawn as a condition, but I'll read it out anyway because it's quite important. The condition as written presents a possible ransom strip type situation by imposing a planning condition not in control of the applicant, i.e. myself. The existing access lane to 21A and the new access lane being created are split by an existing brick gate post as shown on drawing P101. The gate post is 0.8 metres wide. With the existing and new lane running parallel and approximately 1 metre apart as they pass this post, a 2.4 metre clear zone is easily and already achieved as the 2 lanes gradually merge together.
We're reaching the time to finish the speaking.
Yep. Thank you. The highway safety concern is therefore mitigated anyway by the proposed plan without imposing conditions on the height of the aforementioned hedge. We request that this planning condition is removed. Thank you once again for considering our application. In summary, we request that you support the case officer's recommendation to approve the application, support the case officer's decision not to impose additional conditions requested by Matrix, and approve our request to amend planning conditions C8 and C13. Before taking any questions, I would just ask the chairman and the committee indeed. You've uploaded a document this morning that suggests on page 4, in certain circumstances, you may allow additional time with the permission of yourself and the chairman. Now, an hour and a half ago, a comment was put on this document from the parish council. There's been no comment from the parish council for the last 5 months. I therefore request I'm allowed 1 further minute to address those points.
Chairman, we are
Chairman,
6 minutes now.
Right, okay, fair enough. Right, thank you very much. We've basically gone 1 minute over anyway, Mr. Smith. And Mr. Smith, as you can see, that has been addressed, or have you heard addressed by the officer anyway, as all those things have been addressed. So I don't think there's any need to continue with another minute at this stage, because the officer has already said that all those points have been dealt with. Okay.
Okay, thank you for your
right.
time.
Okay, committee, do you have any questions, please, for Mr. Smith? No questions? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Smith. We'll now move on. Okay, we've had that. Do any members now have any questions for officers at all about this application? Any queries? Councillor Casey.
Thank you, Chair. I'd really just like to ask a planning officer about this condition 8, and just to clarify the request of the applicant and how it stands with your recommendation, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Casey. Yes, condition 8 requires a scheme for hard and soft landscaping, and it asks for 3 things in particular: the ground levels, planting plans, details of any boundary treatment. And we felt that it would still be necessary to retain the element regarding boundary treatment. The plan that the applicant referred to, the proposed site layout plan, yes, it does show the existing boundary treatment, hedging, fencing, and so on. However, it's sort of schematic in its description, and therefore we felt that we would, given that the site is close to the conservation area, and that if any other boundary treatment were proposed, it could have an impact on the appearance of the conservation area. We felt that it was necessary to keep that condition, and therefore any boundary treatment would need to be shown separately. So anything that's proposed that's not shown on those plans would need to be submitted.
Is that okay, Councillor Casey? Yes? Yes, I see you nodding. Okay.
Yes.
Any further questions at all, please, for officers? Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Chairman. The applicant in his presentation has said that the conservation officer and the highway have no issues now. Is that the case?
Yes, that's correct. After the course of a lot of discussions around the application, the conservation officer, having seen various amendments that have been submitted to the design of the dwelling, the location of the garage, and so on, is now satisfied with the proposals. And also the Highway Authority have confirmed that they are also satisfied with the proposals, subject to conditions.
Okay. Councillor Hiller.
Thank you, Chair. Is it a fact that the conservation area did indeed make a negative comment about the dormer window treatment on the frontal elevation, Mrs. Van?
Yes, that is one point that they have made, which no amendments have been made to. The elevations show that the size of the dormer windows would be similar to the ground floor windows, and they had asked that they be altered. Now it's up to the planning officer to weigh the views of the consultees, and we felt that given the other changes that had been made, the appearance of the dwelling would be satisfactory without that sort of lesser change to the elevation of the building.
Thank you, Mrs. Bland. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or clarity needed from officers? No. Okay, then we'll move on to debate. Who would like to start debate then, please? Anybody? Councillor Hiller.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it's important to remember that this is a reserved matters application, Chair, for the detailed design of a dwelling, which has already been approved in outline form. I reiterate, I think it's important to remember that the principle of this development is established and improved and approved, as has already been stated. I think it appears the initial objections regarding the house size and the design and the garage are now largely overcome, and the revised proposal that's in front of us now is acceptable to our officers, has been alluded. Subject to the conservation officer's recommendation regarding the garage door and dormer treatment, I think should be looked at by the officers, and I'm quite happy that the officers consider that further. I think these are two quite important elements. The dormer, I personally think, being the same size as the ground floor, I think looks incongruous, but and I think that comment was made by the conservation officer. So I think the applicant, should this be approved, the applicant needs to look at that quite seriously, I think. If the members are agreeable, I would propose that we are allowed, that this should be agreed between the officers and the applicant. The issue of the neighbours' amenity loss, Chair, is not considered significant due to the obscure proposed bathroom window. There is no overlooking there, and the garage size, the roof design, and I think the sighting alleviate any particular issues from that front bedroom window. Regarding highways, Mrs. Bland has more than adequately explained that element to me, and the reduction in the hedge height is no longer needed, so I don't have an issue with that. Ward Councillor, you've referred it to the committee. You neither support nor object to the application, but you just want an independent view of the committee members, and I'm obviously more than happy for that. That's what we're here to do. But I'm minded to consider that this development is actually acceptable, Chair. I think the applicant has made huge changes to ameliorate the initial issues that were voiced by our planning officers, who I think universally now find themselves accepting the application as it's been built before us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hiller. Councillor Jamil.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, I'm new to this in terms of looking through the application and stuff, because it's been considered previously in outline planning permission, but it looks like the people who want to build this I've looked at this, looked at the objections, and I've come back with something that I feel that I can actually approve. So today I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Jamil. I have Councillor Casey now, please.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, this came to me at the beginning of April, and I was approached by both sides of the, I suppose, of the application, and I spoke to both, and both had very good reasons why it should either go ahead or shouldn't go ahead, and material ones as well. And I thought the best way would be to go through the process, go through the negotiations, and come up with a solution. And I must admit, as ward councillor, I'm very happy with this, with how things have progressed, and I would be very happy to support this application today. I think all of the objections that Highways put forward have been sort of mitigated now, I think, and that then takes out the objections to the parish that the parish council had as well. So I agree very much with Councillor Hiller's statement earlier. He must have a speed button to putting his hand up, but no, I'm very happy to support this application today.
Thank you, Councillor Casey. Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I am minded to support this application, mainly for the reason being that the applicants have cooperated with the officers. I would say it's one of those applications where it's not what they want, it's what the officers wanted them to have. So I'm fully supporting the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hogg.
So really sort of echoing what's already been said by my colleagues. I think that the applicants have worked very well with planning to overcome the objections. They've obviously sort of thrown away their initial plans to work in with what the planning officer had to say. So in terms of the kind of slight objection with the dormer windows, I'm just having a look at the pictures now, and I can kind of see why they might want, but actually I think it's not a huge issue, and I think that they look perfectly okay. So on that basis, I'm happy to sort of go completely with the planning officer's recommendations as outlined in the presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the applicant has listened to lots of issues been raised by Highways and the Conservation Area Officer. He's taken on board their concerns and altered the application. I can't see the house that's going to be built is not overlooking the private and infringing on the privacy of number 21A. So I would go for recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Are there any more would like to join the debate? Or are we done? Councillor Hiller?
Only in as much as I have a proposal if debate's finished, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hiller. Well, just from my point of view, I won't add. I think you've done a great job, committee. I think you've put forward all your comments, and I must admit I agree with them all. And I think the applicant has done everything they can, really. And bar the small bit with the windows, I don't think that's any reason to vote against this. So I too will be supporting the officer's decision and the application. If there are no more hands going up, I'm going to move to Councillor Hiller now for your proposal, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As you've probably surmised, I support our officer's recommendation. I think this should be approved. It's too strong to condition, but I certainly would advise and encourage the applicants to look at that first floor dormer window treatment. I personally think it does look incongruous having the windows that size, and personally I think it spoils the facade of that property. It is a significant addition to the area. It abuts the conservation area, and I think it's important that if they're going to build it, then they build it right. It's entirely their option, of course, because it's not been conditioned. But I do suggest that they do look at it. That's my recommendation.
Thank you very much. If I can go back to Sylvia, are you happy with that recommendation? Nothing you want to ask?
Yes, I think my advice would have been, if the committee had wished to see the design of the dormers to be altered, that, you know, the role of the committee at this stage is to either approve or refuse the application, and you have to do so in its entirety and not approve some of it but not another bit.
Yeah.
However, hearing what Councillor Hiller has said, if the committee were minded to approve this application and a permission was issued, if the applicant were then to submit a non-material amendment to reduce the size of the dormers and to line them in lead, as was suggested by the conservation officer, that is something that could be done through the non-material amendment route.
Okay, Councillor Hill, are you happy with that?
Yeah, more than happy with that, Chair. As I said in my recommendation, it's impossible to condition, and I completely appreciate that the application is what it is, and it's what's in front of us now. However, I think on behalf of the applicants, I think it would be a shame personally, and I think they need to take a step back and just look at those dormer windows and just think, you know what, is it look right or doesn't it look right? That's just my thought.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I've got two other hands up, so I'm going to go to the first one. Councillor Casey, are you seconding, or did you want to comment?
Yes, Chair, I want to second.
Okay, we've now got a proposer and a seconder. I've seen your hand go up, Councillor Hogg, but we've got a proposer and the seconder, so we must go to the vote now. So effectively, for clarity, I'll ask each member in turn whether you're
just ask a question.
Yes, certainly.
So if I'm minded to approve, but not with that condition on the dormer, should I vote against this proposal, or should, how does it work?
No,
Sorry.
You're voting for as it is.
It's not a condition.
No, you're
It's
voting
not a
for what's
condition.
before you.
Okay.
Okay, it was just a recommendation by Councillor Hiller. Right, okay, so for clarity, I would ask each member in turn if they are for, against or abstaining. Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brown. For. Councillor Casey.
For.
Councillor Hiller.
Yes, for, Chair.
Councillor Hogg.
I'm for.
Councillor Hussain.
For.
Councillor Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Jamil.
For.
Councillor Rush.
For.
And myself, Councillor Harper, I am for too. Karen, I assume that is an unanimous result?
It is, Chair.
Okay, then the application is therefore agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on now to item 5.2, which is the application at Cedar House, Summer Close in Thorney. And again, if I could ask Sylvia Bland, please, to introduce the item when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for a proposed building contractor's yard and a detached building within the yard itself. The next slide shows the red line of the application. It is located just off the A57, off a small road called Summer Close, where there are a number of residential properties located. The application site itself is currently in agricultural use, as you can see from the next slide, which is an aerial photograph. The application site is right in the middle there, and as you can see, it is surrounded by agricultural fields and is a small cluster of buildings just off the A57 in the vicinity of its roundabout. Next slide, please. This shows a closer up view of the existing houses with their curtilages, and part of this group of houses are the remains of an old farmstead, which have now been converted into barns. And the application site is on the right hand side, currently used as agricultural fields. Next slide, please. This and the next three sides shows the proposed access from Summer Close, which serves the residential properties. Next slide. Again, we can see a further view. The vehicles on the left that you can see are on the A57. this is the end of the road, and the access to the site will be taken from this point here. Next slide. A further view of the junction between the boundary of the existing property and the open fields. Next slide. And lastly, another picture of the site in context, demonstrating the openness of the countryside in this area. Next slide. Okay, now this shows a bit more detail about what is proposed. The site is roughly rectangular in shape, and it would be used in two different ways. The majority of the site, and that bounded by the green hedge, would become an agricultural contractor's yard, and also a detached building, which you can see in the middle of the site. It would be if you take the cursor down, you'll be able to see the building. It is fairly sizable in its extent, being 10 meters wide and 28 meters long, and it would comprise of an office and also of a storage area. The remainder of that part of the site were used for open storage purposes for vehicles, equipment, plant and materials. The second part of the application would be to change the use of the long, thin triangular area just to the south of the building into garden use, and that would be used in conjunction with Cedar House, which is located just to the side of the application site. The site itself, whilst it has open boundaries at the moment, would be enclosed by a hedge, and the applicant has indicated that they would put some bunding up around the boundary. Next slide, please. Okay, yes, and these are some slides showing the appearance of the proposed building. You can see it would be of an agricultural or commercial type of appearance, which is not too dissimilar to other buildings that you might find associated with farms and existing businesses in the countryside. Next slide, please. And this and the remaining slides really demonstrate the openness of the countryside. The council's local plan policy, it very much protects the countryside from development unless in very certain circumstances. With regard to business premises, it does allow for the expansion or rural diversification of existing businesses, but it doesn't encourage new businesses to develop within the open countryside. For that reason, this application is deemed to be unjustified. There is no specific reason for the business to take place in this location, bar that the applicant owns and resides in Cedar House, which is the property adjacent to the application site. And the reason he has put forward for the application is to ensure that his business is located adjacent to his house, where he would have additional security and convenience, and also to make the company a bit more sustainable in that there'd be less journeys to and from the workplace. At the moment, the business occupies two locations, again, some in the local area, but not adjacent to these properties. And the company now wish to amalgamate those two sites onto one site, as is currently proposed next to the business owner's property. We don't consider that to be a sufficient planning reason to go against the council's policy, which is to restrict new development in the countryside. A second concern is that, as you can see from this slide, the countryside is very open and it is currently unbounded, and we feel that this would result in commercial development in the countryside, which would detract from its rural character and from its setting. If we can go to the next slide, that's a further view of the openness. And the one last slide, this shows the a different view looking back towards the property itself. The remaining concern that we have as officers is with the proposed change of use from agricultural to garden land. Again, that is something that is not encouraged by policy. And given that there wasn't an existing farmstead in that area of some historical note, the extension of the land for residential purposes would undermine that previous agricultural character of the area. And that's at the end of the presentation. As you'll see from the report, whilst there are no specific objections from consultees, there is a strong policy objection against the application, and for that reason there are 3 reasons for refusal put forward to you on page 11 of the report. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on now. We have a speaker, Nathan Proctor. He will address committee. Nathan, you have 5 minutes in which to address committee. The Democratic Service Officer will let you know when you have about 30 seconds left. Within your 5 minutes will have lapsed. When you're ready, please unmute your mic and address committee.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Mark.
Good afternoon. Just a bit of a brief background. My name's Nathan Proctor. Moved to the village about 5 years ago. We purchased what was then Corner Farm Cottage, the old dilapidated farmhouse. It currently is now Cedar House, which we gained the planning for to demolish the old house and rebuild. Company is Woodgate Developments, which I'm owner director, as is my sister, who now lives in the village of Thorney. We are house builders in the local area. We deal with Peterborough City Council, South Holland, Fenland, West Norfolk. We do some building contracting works as well, but mainly new housing is our thing. As you're aware, the business is operating from 2 locations at the minute. One currently the office being, well, working from home as well with the current situation. The office is at the side of the parents' house, and a yard in a village up the road in Murrow, which is a bit of a nuisance at the minute. So these new facilities, pretty much we propose is just to take the business a bit further. Big advantage, be right next door to where I live, security reasons. We've got great transport links here, as I'm sure you're aware, being on the side of the A47, because we do build and develop in local areas. We do employ quite a few people in the local areas currently at the minute, tradesmen. We do try and buy a lot of materials locally. With these new facilities, it will give us a chance to employ more people. It'd be great to have some admin staff. I'm sure you can understand, like a small sales team that we look to employ locally. We do have a plan to keep the new proposed buildings sort of in line with the general materials sort of what we've got here at Cedar House. I'll just go to the open countryside. As you can see on the location, the building is sort of at one end of the site, sort of the Cedar House end. So we wouldn't actually be screening the whole open countryside off of as such. We're going to try and keep it one end. Pretty much the new facility is going to be accessed off of somewhere close, as you can see there, which is the old A47. So I don't think we've got any issues there with the highways or anything. It's quite a good, I know it's the old road, but it's still quite in good standard. Yeah, we've got a bit of a landscape scheme as well to try and screen off the commercial building so it isn't too intrusive. And yeah, we've got support from the local councillor and the only neighbour we have, which is next door to us, Summer Barnes, and they're both in support. So I'd like to thank them both. Yeah, that's all really. Welcome any questions, and thanks for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Proctor. Committee members, do you have any questions for Mr. Proctor, please? Councillor Hogg.
Just to address the sort of the triangle portion of land that's at the bottom of the site that you're going to be taking into your garden. Can you just kind of outline the reasons for that?
Yeah, so originally the boundaries slightly changed from the original application. There was a bit of a discrepancy with the farmer of how the boundary is going to be. So pretty much that's been cut off quite a bit. So we would be happy to not extend the garden if that helps, and we could fence and screen the whole thing off so it is completely separate. So that's changed from the original drawing, but it's just been kept as garden. But again, it doesn't have to be. And just another quick point, we would also be happy to tie this new proposed scheme into what we have here, because we're not. It's not a big public separate scheme. We're trying to keep it all in together, so we haven't got any issues with that either.
Okay, Councillor Hogg, have you got another question?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else got any questions at all? No. Okay. Oh, Councillor Jamil, you've come in.
Hi Nathan. Can you just explain what that field is used for at the moment?
Yeah, so it's agricultural at the minute. It's currently set to wheat at the minute, due for harvest very soon, I'm sure. So it is an agricultural field owned by some local farmers.
Okay. Any further questions at all? Councillor Casey.
Thank you, Chair. Nathan, I'm just, how far is your second site away from this site? How sort of, what is the distance?
So one is approximately sort of 10, 15 miles. So 15, 20 minutes, and the office would be sort of 10, 15 minutes away. But it's just more that one's here, one's there, and it's logistically, it's a nightmare. And it's just having that amalgamation, bring it together so we can operate and grow the business now to the next level would be very, very helpful.
Thank
you. Okay. Anybody else? No. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Proctor.
Thank you.
Okay. Committee, do you have any questions or clarification needed from officers, please? Councillor Hiller.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick clarification from Mrs. Bland. When you first opened your address, you did say that the proposal was for an agricultural facility of some description. Could you just either tell me I'm wrong or just clarify that?
Yeah, I described it as a building contractor's yard and building. So I hope I did not say agricultural, because as you'll see on your report on, let's see, well, page 1, it's a proposed building contractor's yard and building.
Yeah, indeed, that's what prompted my query. So you've clarified that. Thank you. You two will tell us the truth, but I'm sure I misheard you. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And the other, Councillor Rush.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a question. If this was an agricultural building, would it be allowed?
Sylvia? Yeah.
The council's policy would allow for agricultural buildings, and indeed there are some permitted development rights that allow those to be built without going through a full planning application process, subject to a number of criteria. So yes, the council's policy does encourage agricultural uses and buildings within the countryside.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions or clarification needed? No. Okay, then we're going to move to debate. Who would like to start the debate on this one, please? Councillor Hiller, you've come on, please.
There's me using my supposed magic button, Chair. So I did pause for thought.
Yeah.
Just a couple of thoughts leading on from that, Chair. I'm a little bit nervous about this application in that I think as a committee we need consistency in our decision making process, and the status of this land currently is one of open countryside. I drove past in the last couple of days, and as the applicant quite rightly alludes, it is a farmed field currently. I think we need to be very, very conscious of that. I completely understand Councillor Simon's reasons for refusal as the ward councillor, as sympathetic ward councillor, but I'm afraid I have to disagree with his support for this application. I think we need to avoid the potential, and I stress it is the potential for odd bits of field and scraps of countryside that would be tested against any decision to allow this application, Chair. I think we need to understand completely that it is a yard. The applicant is a builder and developer and very successful, I'm sure, and I'm sure he builds a lovely house. But it's got nothing to do with agriculture, nothing whatsoever to do with agriculture. What we're looking at here is the open, and I've been making notes, is the open storage of building materials, plant, a large office building with, by the applicant's own admission, extra admin staff and sales staff, etc., etc. So I don't think by any stretch of the imagination this should be allowed, I'm afraid, for the reasons that have been ably cited by Mrs. Bland. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hiller, thank you. Anybody else? No other comments? Councillor Jamil?
I'm going to give a slightly different view on this. I think if we'd had that attitude, Peterborough would never have got to where it is today. I just think that because of the fact that this land is right next to where they live and the convenience, I think losing one field will not make a big dent into the open countryside. I think if it was further away or if there was nothing around, then maybe I would be looking at it differently, but I'm just about supportive of the application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Joe. Councillor Hogg?
So I'm in two minds over this application. I have a lot of sympathy for the applicant insofar as I know that in terms of security of plant is a huge worry for the industry, and that having his plant right next to his house is clearly something that he would want to have. And you know, on that basis, I think, you know, I have a great deal of sympathy in that regard. I think the fact that the building essentially looks like an agricultural building and could quite easily be converted into an agricultural building for the storage of the machinery that goes with farming. That essentially a farmer could quite easily put a planning application in to put his machinery there, and then once it's all been built, could then turn around and say, actually, we don't really need this building anymore, and I'm going to sublet it to somebody, and it may well be that they're going to use it for the storage of construction plant instead. I'm not particularly pleased with the little sliver of land that's going into a garden. I think that is probably a step too far. I don't know if I mean, as I said, from my point of view, I think as it stands, I'm not going to support the application, but I think you know, if that garden bit was taken out, then I might be looking at it slightly more favourably.
Thank you, Councillor Hiller.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's a lot of supposes and maybes in Councillor Hogg's address, and to be honest, what we've got to be looking at here is the application that's in front of us, and the application in front of us, and with enormous respect to Jamil,
Oh, you've gone.
This has always been a contentious issue. The building in open countryside. What the application is for is a builder's yard. It's for a builder's yard. It's for the change of use of a farmed field into a builder's yard for the storage of building materials, plant, for the erection of a 10-metre by 30-metre building where staff are going in. It is completely alien in that area of countryside, which has been ably described as open countryside. It's a very, very open aspect. And I just think it's wrong that we completely, or considering completely riding roughshod over a very, very fundamental planning policy of this council. And I just think if we do that, Chair, we're on very, very thin ice indeed.
Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Hiller has said, we have to look what application is before the committee. Unfortunately, the application before us is asking about agriculture. So what I'm going to say is agriculture means agriculture. What the applicant wants is to build a building site where he could store his material, where he could open his office. So that doesn't relate to agriculture. So I'm not minded to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Hogg, but you again.
I just wanted to point out the fact that this isn't a field. It's a very small proportion of a field. It's about, just looking at the Google Maps, I would suggest it's less than 1% of the size of that field. This isn't a huge loss to the agricultural output, I would suggest, of the field. Make of that as you will.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Casey.
Thank you, Chair. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Hiller on this one, because I must admit, when I was reading through all the papers, I was thinking, if this was for agricultural use, then actually there wouldn't be a problem. But the fact that it isn't to do with agricultural use, I've listened to the applicant's presentation as well, and I was also trying to even think that it was possibly more sustainable to have the equipment. Because in my mind, I was thinking agriculture equipment on site might make it more sense. But as it's not for agriculture, I think even that little test in my mind that was trying to find a way has fallen through. Yeah, no, I think it's a fundamental principle, really, to keep the field, keep the land as it is. And I'm inclined to agree with officers' recommendation to refuse.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Nobody else want to join the debate on that one? No, it's just myself. Well, as a committee, at the end of the day, we are charged to protect the environment via the planning system. We have policies. These policies have been written, agreed, consulted on. And it's our job to effectively enforce those policies to a point when we're asked. Now, I understand the sympathy and sympathise, with Mr. Proctor and his wish. I understand why he wants to do what he wants to do, but it's important that we are consistent. We follow policy. If we go against it, then we set a precedent. Let's be honest. And to answer, like Councillor Jamil said, it may only be one field or 1% of a field, as Councillor Hogg said. But 1% of every field becomes a lot of fields that are an open space that have gone. I don't think, we can go against policy, can go against officers' recommendations, but I don't think there's a strong enough case here to have a builder's yard in the middle of the open countryside. So I'm afraid I must urge you, I certainly will be voting against, to follow policy and not allow this to happen. So in that case, I'll be voting against the application. Thank you. Anybody else? No. Do I have a proposer at all, please? Anybody want to propose? Councillor Casey, you've come on.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose that we agree with officer's recommendation and refuse this application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Iqbal. Are you seconding?
Yes, that's correct, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. Now, for clarity again, I'll ask each member in turn if they are for, against or abstaining. Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Casey.
4.
Councillor Hiller.
4, Chair.
Councillor Hogg.
4.
Councillor Hussain.
4.
Councillor Iqbal.
4.
Councillor Jamil.
Against.
Councillor Rush.
4.
And Councillor Harper, which is myself, is 4 as well. So Karen, please, with the result.
Sorry, Councillor Harper, could we ask Councillor Hiller again, because the reception was interrupted slightly.
Yeah. Councillor Hiller, please.
I'm for the proposal, Chair.
Thank you. So that is 8 for and 1 against.
Thank you. Therefore, the application is refused. Thank you very much. Thank you, Karen. Right. Okay, item 5.3 relates to 1 Rectory Lane, Linton. And I will go over to Sylvia when you're ready to introduce the item, please.
Okay, thank you very much. And this application at 1 Rectory Lane relates to an existing dwelling. And if we can see in the next slide, it's located just off Rectory Lane next to the Bluebell Public House. The application is for a single-storey detached double garage with an attached covered walkway, first floor extension and single-storey rear extension, together with the conversion of the existing garage. So we'll just take you through the next few slides just to explain where those various elements of the proposals are. This slide shows the site plan for the existing property. You can see it's 1.5-storey dwelling itself with dormers in the roof space. It has a rear garden to the east, and then it has a side garden to the north. There are 2 access drives, one to the north and one to the south of the application property. The next slide shows you a photograph of the property as it is. You can see that it's got a substantial hedge to the front, which obscures quite a lot of the views, but you can see the site and then the high street just further back in the distance. The next slide shows the application alongside its neighbour at number 3 Rectory Lane, which is a very similar property. As we'll see in further slides, the garage that you can see would be converted to living accommodation, and an extension would be put on the top of that, creating a first floor extension, thereby filling in that gap, as it were. Next slide. This shows this shows number 3 Rectory Lane, the neighbouring property. And then the next slide shows the properties across the road at 8 and 10 Rectory Lane. And if we could move on, the next few slides show the elevational drawings of the existing building. There you can see the existing garage with the sort of the gap above it where a first floor extension would be inserted. And the lower slide shows the existing side elevation, and you can see there the outline of the profile of the main roof with the profile of the existing sort of single-storey element to the property, and you can see that on the elevation above on the left-hand side. Next slide. That shows the rear elevation and the side elevation with the single-storey garage. And the next slide. That shows the footprint, the ground floor footprint of the house with the garage on the right-hand side. Again, it shows that the driveways and the side garden over to the left-hand side. Next slide will show the first floor accommodation as existing. Currently, it's a 3-bedroom property. The next slide. This is a further closer up view of the property as we saw before. And then the next slide. This shows the access to the north with the sitting room area just to the right of the car. You'll notice there's a very large sycamore tree at the back. That is within the grounds of the pub, and consent has already been given to remove that tree as it is causing structural issues to the pub. It's located too closely to that building, and it has got permission to be removed. The next couple of slides show a closer up view of the area where the detached garage would be located. And then the next slide shows the proximity with the pub itself and showing that it doesn't have any significant windows that would be affected. Next slide. Right, so we can see here now, looking at the bottom end of the slide, where the first floor extension would be provided above the garage, together with a small single-story rear extension. Then to the north of the house, to the top of the slide, you can see the location of the proposed garage. Now, this is another application that has been amended during the course of its determination. Originally, what was proposed was a garage that was attached to the house where the sitting room is, and as a continuation to provide a long linear building. This site is within the conservation area, although it's a modern house, and the conservation officer objected to the application, suggested that it would be more acceptable if the detached garage was set further back, and you can see that it's stepped back from the frontage of the house. It's not attached anymore. It would be detached with just a covered walkway between it and the sitting room. And then, as we'll see from further slides, again, that shows the location of the ground floor footprint of the proposed extensions. You can see how a garage would be provided, and then at the other end, the garage would be converted to a further bedroom with an ensuite and utility room to the back. Next slide. This shows the first floor with a further bedroom within the roof space. And the next slide. Okay, this elevation slide is very helpful, I think, and it shows how the proposed garage would be of a reduced height compared to the sitting room and compared to the main house itself. So you can see that a stepping down effect has occurred. The garage doors have also been improved in that they would appear as two separate garage doors rather than one very large door. The bottom slide of the side elevation shows again the roof profiles, how they would again be stepped down, with the garage looking very subservient compared to the rest of the house. The garage itself would also be clad in timber cladding and would therefore be different to the main house, which is a combination of brick and feature stone column details. And the reason for that is, again, to make it look subservient and to give it the appearance of an outbuilding rather than as an intrinsic part of the house itself. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the rear elevation of the property. And then the next slide. And sorry, that's the end of the presentation. So thank you, Chairman. I think the main things to note here are that the application has been amended quite a bit during the course of its determination. This has overcome concerns by the conservation officer. There is still an outstanding objection from the parish council, who are particularly concerned about the use of timber cladding to the garage element and to the angle of the roof slope not matching that of the house itself. We saw that in an earlier slide. There are no other objections. There will be no impact on highway safety or on neighbouring amenity, and therefore the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have two people registered to speak. Firstly, I've got Parish Councillor Robert Johnson or John Hayes. I don't know which one we have. Who's on?
I'm on. Councillor
Right,
Robert Johnson.
Okay, Councillor Johnson. Welcome.
Thank you.
You will have 10 minutes when you're ready to address committee. The Democratic Service Officer will let you know when you have 30 seconds left and when the 10 minutes has elapsed. When you're ready, can you please unmute your mic and address committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, and thank you for allowing me to speak on this item today. I'm Councillor Robert Johnson. I'm Vice Chairman of Glinton Parish Council and the Chair of the Glinton Parish Council Planning Working Group. To be clear, the Parish Council does not object to the substance of the planning application and support the officer's recommendation for approval. However, Parish Council unanimously objected to the use of the timber cladding as a finished material. There are no other timber-clad buildings in the vicinity, including the bluebell referred to in the officer's report. It would be in contradiction to your own planning policies set out in the design and development in selected villages, as correctly referred to in the officer's report. We urge you to grant permission for the application and make conditions C2 and C3 dependent on the materials being the same of the existing building, thus conforming with Glinton 10, which covers the whole of the village in the document, not just the conservation area. And it states, for extensions to existing buildings, brickwork and stonework should match the existing materials of the main building style. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Parish Councillor Johnson. Okay, members, do you have any questions, please? No questions at all. Right. Thank you, Parish Councillor Johnson. Okay, we'll move on from that. So I've just lost the my mouse on here. Right. Okay. I can now invite Councillor Holditch, please. Councillor Holditch, you will have 5 minutes to address the committee. The Democratic Service Officer will let you know when you have 30 seconds left and when the 5 minutes have elapsed. When you're ready, please unmute your mic and address committee.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman and members. I've asked to address this committee because the Parish Council have objected to the materials on it. As you've heard from the officer, there was quite a bit of advice given to me by the officer, Mr. Falco, which I accepted and put in a revision to the planning application. And you know, I'm quite happy with that revision. I need the alteration to the house. As you've heard, it's a 1.5 story house. There's very little room upstairs, and some of the bedrooms you can't even get a double bed in. And I need, for my health reasons, to get some rooms that we can move around in. But I know that's not a planning issue, but I have to say that you know, I'm just saying to committee, I am happy with the plan that has been submitted and recommended to you as a council. And I would point out on the meeting, your meeting, I think it's the 31st of July, you approved another building within Glinton with the same cladding. So I don't think it's setting a precedent at all. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say. I would ask members to please support the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holditch. Members, have any questions, please, for Councillor Holditch? No, there are no questions. Thank you, Councillor Holditch. Okay, members, do you have any questions or clarification needed from officers at all? Councillor Hogg.
Just to, I was going to bring it up anyway, but Councillor Holditch has already sort of mentioned it. Can we just clarify the situation with the timber clad? I think it was a garage, was it not, on the other side of the green?
Sorry,
Yeah.
when you refer to a garage on the other side of the green, are you still talking about this application site or a different site?
No. So as was all previously intimated by Councillor Holditch, it wasn't that long ago that we approved a planning application
Yes.
for a building where there was a garage going in, or no, it wasn't a garage. It was like an annex or something that was going to be timber framed, I
Yeah.
believe. Sorry, timber clad.
Yes, that's correct. Committee resolved to approve that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I just need to sort of draw members' attention to the fact that you need to look at every case on its merits. I appreciate there needs to be a consistency in decision making. I'd perhaps draw your attention to page 4 of the report, where the conservation officer's comments specifically refer to the reasons why timber cladding would be appropriate in this area, and it's because the proposed garage would be seen against the walls, the stone walls of the listed building, the Bluebell pub, which we saw in the photographs, and the fact that timber materials would appear softer and more natural in relationship to the listed building as opposed to brickwork from a modern building. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Sylvia. Councillor Hiller. Is he not with us? Councillor Hiller?
Can you hear me?
Yes, got you now.
Ah, splendid. Sorry, the screen went blank now. No, I think Mrs. Bland has pretty much made the comment that I was going to make in answer to Councillor Fogg's query. Yes, we did. I think it was unanimous decision, Chair, to approve. I think it was Mrs. Gregg. She lives in the green, right by the church. So arguably a more sensitive position, certainly within the conservation area. And it was a similar cladding. My query really was for Mrs. Bland. The conservation officer is happy. In fact, it's the conservation officer's recommendation to clad this garage in the timber. Could you just confirm that?
Yes, I believe that was the case. Yes, that in the discussions around the height, the location, the connection with the dwelling, that there was a suggestion from the conservation officer to also change the materials.
Right.
Thank you for that.
Okay, anybody else? No. Okay, then we'll move on to the debate then, please. Who would like to start that? Councillor Casey.
Actually, Chair, it was I put it up just before we went to the debate. I just wanted to ask just one question about the precedence of various policies, and I suppose you've got the Glinton Parish Council policy, and they're wanting the stone, but it sounds like our conservation officer is wanting the wooden clad. And which would take priority over the two? Would it be the PCC conservation officer in the end?
Yeah, I think it's about more how we interpret policy, and Glinton Policy 10 does state for extensions to existing buildings, brickwork and stonework should match the existing materials of the main building style. I think in his interpretation of the policy, the conservation officer, first of all, is treating this as a detached building. It's not now an extension anymore. So certainly the part of the application that is for an extension does match. The conversion of the garage and the first floor extension would match in terms of materials. That would be brick and stonework. And this would be an outbuilding, and therefore it's looking at that. Well, it's looking to create an outbuilding type effect in the appearance of the garage, which would be detached, and therefore I think it still is in the spirit of the guidelines within the conservation area that it be using natural materials. It's looking at materials that would blend in with the listed building. So it's not just simply one takes precedence over another. I think it's about interpreting the policy in relation to specific applications and their circumstances.
And the fact that it's an outbuild, it's a detached building, would actually sort of carry on with the principle that we followed a couple of months ago as well, with it being an outhouse as well. So actually, I can see a consistency there. Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay.
Councillor Hiller.
It's just general debate, Chair, not a question for Mrs. Bland.
Okay, we'll go on to, unless there's another question.
Chair.
Councillor Rush.
Mr. Chair.
I'm afraid,
Chairman,
Mr. Johnson, you've had your time. You can't come back in.
I just wanted to point out it's a
No.
Peterborough City Council document, not a Glinton one.
Okay, thank you very much. But you know the rules. You shouldn't come in like that
sorry.
without asking. So please don't interrupt without me asking you to come in. Thank you. Do appreciate what you've said there. Councillor Hiller. Councillor Hiller, have we lost him again?
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're back.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Chair. I think the overview I have on this is, you know, I'm one of the ward councillors, as you'll know, but I have no predisposition. You know, it is an attractive, well-established 1.5-storey dwelling which sits well within the village of Glinton. I think the extensions being proposed follow the natural form of the building. I think the detachment of the garage, I think, was an excellent suggestion by our conservation officer, endorsed by Mrs. Bland. The different treatment, it just emphasises its separateness from the main dwelling, and I have no reason at all not to support this recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, again, we've got the conservation officer objecting to the original plan. The applicant has listened to it and changed the application to his recommendations, and I have no reason why not to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Councillor Hogg.
Essentially, just echoing the comments I made for the first application that we heard today, insofar as commending the applicant for working with the planning team to get a result that is you know, something that is workable. I think as far as the timber treatment, you know, we have previously said that this is, you know, the preferred option for that area, and I think that it continues with that vein. So on that basis, I'm more than happy to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. Anybody else want to enter the debate? Councillor Brown.
Can't see a problem with the cladding. If we passed it before.
I've lost your voice. If you want to come, your mic's gone off.
I can't see no problem. We passed it on the green, the cladding, and I think we should pass it here on this garage, because it's attached from the property. It's like a shed, really, a wooden shed, really. I know it's a double garage, but anyway, I'll go along with the committee on this.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No. I think it's all been. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hogg, did you want to come back on?
Sorry, I was pre-gunning for the making a proposal. Sorry.
Oh, you're keen. Okay, fine. Anybody else? No. I think it's been said, really. Most people have said it. You know, the applicant has sought guidance, and the conservation officer has given that, and he's accepted that recommendation and would like to go with that. I think you know, the actual hitting the nail on the head was, from my point of view, this is not an extension to an existing building, where, yes, I think the timber might have been a bit iffy then, in my view, and it would have been better to match. But as it is a separate building, and in this case a garage with a clear gap between, I think my view is the conservation officer was right, and it does need to look a little bit more like a temporary type building, such as a shed, etc., with a wooden finish. So I would be inclined to go with officers and agree to this one. Okay, Councillor Hiller.
I have a proposal, Chair, if the debate's finished.
Thank you, but I think you're second to Councillor Hogg, unless he's not going to want to come in.
I thought Councillor Hogg had put his hand down, Chair.
Well, he's back on again now.
After me.
We could do an arm wrestle, but I'm not sure that's going to work somehow.
No. Okay. Are there anybody else?
I'm happy to second if you want to propose, or
no. I insist.
Can we wait? Can we wait until we finish? Then I'll bring you in.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else want to add to the debate on this? Councillor Brown, are you looking to come in on the seconding or something?
Yeah.
Now, I've lost your mic again.
Yes, I'm coming in to second it.
Okay, hold on until we get the proposal then, because obviously you need to make sure you're happy with it before it's you second it. Anybody else want to go on the debate? Then I'm going to go to Councillor Hogg, please, for your proposal.
Well, unsurprisingly, I feel that we should essentially accept this and approve the application. As I said before, I think it's a works well, looks good, and is exactly the kind of housing proposals that we should be approving.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. Councillor Brown, are you going to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. You're the seconder. So we have a proposal and a seconder. We now need to take a vote. I will now ask each member in turn if they are for, against, or abstaining. Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Casey.
For.
Councillor Hiller.
Yes, for the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hogg.
For.
Councillor Hussain.
For.
Councillor Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Jamil.
For.
Councillor Rush.
For.
And myself, Councillor Hogg, I'm for too. So Karen, can you confirm that's a unanimous result?
It is, Chair.
Okay, so therefore the application is agreed. Thank you very much. Right, okay, well that brings us to the end of the actual business for the Planning Committee and Environmental Protection Committee. So thank you very much for all your help. Thank you, officers. Thank you, everybody who came on to speak. And thank you very much to all members of the public and the press who have been watching online. Take care and we'll see you again soon. Obviously, committee-wise, if you could please just hold on while I make an announcement about the training that's to follow. Thank you.